YouTube people. So for today's video, I thought I would do some tips for the forever hungry, because this is totally me, and how you can still diet without eating 24/7, because I've totally been there and I've figured out some tips along the way that have really helped with this. So yeah, I'm gonna share them with you. Alright, so getting right to it, tip number 1 seems really random, but mushrooms is one of my favorite tools to eat less during meals. And this is because mushrooms are high in selenium and vitamin D, so you know you're getting a lot of benefits when you have this, because not a lot of foods contain much vitamin D, so really love eating mushrooms. They're best to eat raw because you get more of the nutrients in them, but personally I've learned that I prefer them cooked. So what I do is I usually have about 4 of these giant mushrooms before a meal. They're very low carb. Mushrooms are high in protein. They also have some fiber in there, so when you eat them, you're going to be filling up your stomach right before your meal. I like to cook them just in not even oil, really. All I do is just spray the pan with some oil very lightly. I put the mushrooms in and then cover the pan, so that way your mushrooms don't burn and they kind of steam. I just do that for about probably like 10 minutes until they're nice and soft, and then I add some salt, pepper, and a little bit of garlic powder or fresh garlic. And that's how I eat them, just before any meal, and this makes me so much more full, and I tend to be less hungry for the actual food I was going to eat after. So eat mushrooms if you have a craving, then see how your craving is after the mushrooms. Alright, so tip number 2 is eat foods that take you a long time to eat, because you want to be taking as long as you can, because as they say, your stomach takes about, or your brain takes about 20 minutes to register if you're full. So things also that are high in volume, like I said, mushrooms earlier, but any veggies that are high in volume are really good. So something like a giant salad that would just take you forever to eat. What I like to do is just like have a huge bowl with like mainly lettuce, but then add a bunch of other things in there that make it taste really good, and just like snack on it for a really long time. And by the end, you are so full because of all the volume in it and all the water that vegetables contain. So I think this is really good, because that way you actually get to feel when you're full, because you've been eating for so much longer. The thing you can do is if you're having nuts of any kind, try and buy them in the shell, because that way it'll take you longer to open them and then eat them. And also nuts are really high in calories, so it's best to eat them slower. So I think that's a really great tip. Alright, so tip number 3 is giant smoothie bowls. I know some of you might have seen these on Instagram. A lot of people like to make them really creative, but this is something I used to eat when I was on very low calories, and they would keep me so full because there's so much volume you can get out of them. And there's some simple sort of tips that you can do to make your smoothies bigger in volume but still have less calories. So what I do use protein powder, because I highly recommend adding protein to your smoothies. It'll make it a lot more filling because protein is slower digesting. So yeah, definitely add protein. But the big thing is, if you want your smoothie to be bigger in volume, add about a 1/4 cup of egg whites to your smoothie. I know this sounds crazy, but trust me, you will not taste them. It will add volume. And if you want to buy pasteurized ones, please don't use raw ones. But yeah, a 1/4 cup of egg whites will add so much like fluffiness and volume to your smoothie. Also use like almond milk, something low calorie along with it, because you don't just want egg whites as your liquid. And then also, if you don't have a problem with it, because I know some people can cause digestive issues, use xanthan gum, because a little bit of an xanthan gum can make your smoothie so fluffy, so big. Trust me, it's like the secret ingredient. You haven't had that sort of thick, fluffy texture to your smoothies ever, and you want to eat it with a spoon, use xanthan gum. So tip number 4 is soup. Honestly, soup is one of my favorite things. I could eat it all the time, 24/7. Basically, if you have soup, like just before your meal or something, always have it as like an appetizer, because the volume of soup and all the liquid will totally fill you up before eating your actual meal. And so what I do is I keep my soups pretty low calorie and then have something higher in calories afterwards. So what I do is blend up broccoli or cauliflower. Those are 2 of my favorites. Blending them themselves already thickens your soup quite a bit. But if you want to add things to your soup, just like more so than just having broth and cauliflower. Some low calorie add-ins, there's actually pureed cottage cheese if you want to lower the calories of the cheese you add but also increase the protein. That's one thing that I love to add. You can also add pumpkin to soups. You can add low-fat cheese, even regular fat cheese, just add a bit. It doesn't take much to make your soup taste good. Also, I even add heavy cream in my soup. I just use a small amount. Feel free to use just milk, regular cream, anything you want. But basically, the key is to make your soup high in volume and high in nutrients, and you can eat this just before your actual bigger food or higher in calorie food. That way you eat less of the other food. Alright, so tip number 5 is to have tea or coffee in between your meals. I know this isn't for everyone. Some people are against drinking caffeine. I am not one of those people. I love caffeine. So if you're like me, this probably will work for you. By the way, this isn't my cup. This is my mother's. So yeah, I don't love reading that much. But anyways, having tea or coffee in between your meals is a great way to curb your hunger cravings. Even if you have coffee with maybe 1 tablespoon of cream or 1 tablespoon or half a cup of almond milk, something like that. Really great way to keep the calories down but also kind of fill you up just a tiny bit in between your meals. Obviously, I wouldn't suggest having cups and cups of coffee every day. Just have 1 in between your meals if you really feel you need it, or go for tea. You can buy tea that's not caffeinated either, so that's also a good way to get in some extra liquid volume in between your meals. Number 6 is kind of similar to tip number 5, but if you don't like coffee or tea, you could also go for diet drinks. Again, I know these aren't for everyone, but honestly, after being in food nutrition and going through studies about sugar replacements like aspartame, I've learned that aspartame is only really harmful to you in excessively high amounts. So consuming 1 diet drink a day is not going to put you over that limit, and so it shouldn't cause harm to you at all. Again, I know if you don't like this idea, then feel free to avoid it, but this is just one extra thing I do to stay full between meals. So tip number 7 is kind of, again, going off of tips number 5 and 6. If you don't like either of those options, then lemons are your best friend. Lemon water is so good for you. I don't even like lemon water that much, but I drink it just for the benefits of it. Especially if you're on a low-carb diet, I highly, highly recommend that you drink lemon water, because on a lower carb diet like keto, you're flushing out water and lots of calcium at the same time, and what can happen is calcium combined with oxalates that are from your diet, such as foods like spinach, which is super high in oxalates, and this binding can cause kidney stones. So to prevent this, you can drink lemon water, which has the citrate in it that will break up the calcium and oxalate binding, thus preventing kidney stones. So that's just one benefit of lemon water. There's so many others, as you can probably find online. Yeah, that's just one tip. It also fills you up drinking a lot of lemon water. I mean, if you like it, drink it hot or cold, and that'll work for you. So my next tip is pickles. I know, again, this is another thing I'll be judged for, but I know pickles are high in sodium, but they are such a good thing to eat in between meals rather than snacking on a ton of other food. I wouldn't suggest eating a ton of pickles. 1 or 2 is the best way to go. Just eat the regular ones. Not very specific, but they're a great way to keep you full between meals. And if you're on a low carb diet, then sodium is actually very important for you because you're losing electrolytes very often, more so than on a higher carb diet. So if you are on a lower carb diet, this is probably a better option for you. The sodium will be a nice pick-me-up, especially just before a workout. Alright, so tip number 9 is fiber. Fiber is so important in your diet, and so many people neglect it or will not eat it, especially on a low-carb diet, and then they wonder why they are constipated or can't go to the washroom or have bloating. This is because you are lacking fiber. And no, eating more fat is not going to just automatically replace not eating fiber. Fiber is so essential in your diet. There's 2 kinds, soluble and insoluble. They're both very important. If you have a hard time getting fiber in, then try and eat more foods like chia seeds, flax seeds, psyllium husk. You almonds, which are really great in fiber. What else? Avocados too are really great. There's a lot of like fruits, sort of like vegetables you can eat that are high in fiber. But if you are struggling really hard to get in fiber, then I highly recommend my favorite baking product, Vitafiber. This is something I've used for like years now. Don't even know when I started using it, but it's like my favorite thing. They used to use it in Quest bars as well. It's like IMO fiber. So it's a sugar-free, low-calorie, soluble dietary fiber with a mild, sweet, pleasant taste. So basically you can use it to replace flour, you can use it to replace syrup in recipes, and it tastes really good in recipes. I like to add extra sweetener with it because it is a mild sweetener, but I use this in a ton of my baking. If you want to see more, you can go to my Instagram at SammySamGirl, and I have a ton of recipes there using it. And you can also buy this in powdered form, so you can use it in baked goods recipes, but either version works. And so yeah, that's my tips for fiber. Now I'm going to tell you one of the most obvious tips. Drink water. Stay very hydrated because, as you may have heard, water, like cravings for like water, can be mixed up with cravings for more food. So if you're hydrated and you feel hungry, then you know it's actually hunger that you're feeling. Also, studies have shown, and don't take my word for it, you can see the study yourself, that water, drinking about like 2 glasses of water or like 500, I think, milliliters before a meal or just throughout the day even, can increase your metabolism by 30% for that day. So that's pretty big increase for just water. And I mean, the science shows this, you can believe it or not, but I've started doing this technique myself and I think it's a really good idea. And lastly, my other tip is just sort of like a bonus tip. Stay distracted, listen to music, do something else other than thinking about food, and you will do really great with not having those hunger cravings. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video, you like these tips. Sorry I have to go now, but please comment, like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye.